What's going on, guys? In today's episode, we're going to be talking about writing riffs for guitar.
Alright guys, so let's talk about riffs. So I feel like there's a lot to unpack, to be completely honest. I mean, there's so many different styles of riffs and stuff, and so many different things that you can do within a riff to make it interesting and sort of like fulfill the function that it has in the song. So I guess what I mean by that is, like, say the riff is an intro riff versus a chorus riff or a verse riff. So because they serve different functions, it is important to cater to the functions that they serve because it will be the most impactful for the music overall. I guess, too, by that, what I mean is, like, for example, if you had a, standard rock song with, like, a vocalist, you would want to make sure you leave some space for the vocals within, like, your verse riff, and you want to also make sure that your chorus riff leaves space for the vocals as well, but also amps up the intensity, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's important to make sure that when you're writing your riffs that you sort of keep in mind either where you want it to go or be flexible later on in the writing process and not necessarily have a set place in your song for that particular idea. Alright, so the first type of riff that I want to talk about are breakdowns. Dude, breakdowns are great because they create insane amounts of intensity, as well as, in some cases, driving the momentum forward in your song. So there's quite a few examples of that I can think of, and dude, one of them is Lamb of God. I think you start with the rhythmic layer, right? And that just repeats while the new layers come on. And each consecutive layer brings intensity and momentum, and that's just killer. It just really helps you to create some really epic moments in your songs, and you can sort of lead up to a pinnacle. So, like, maybe like a guitar solo, a new riff that's, like, insane, like, just, like, I would call it, like, a hook riff. So not like a chorus, but, like, something that catches your attention instrumentally, not because of the vocals. Chorus is very important. Differentiation, having both the instrumentals and the vocals in synchronicity to create that sort of, like, memorable sort of feel that you get in a chorus. Another type of riff is sort of like the more busy riffs. They do include sort of those rhythmic elements that you would find in a breakdown, but more like galloped and sort of short, like quarter note duration type things, like... something like that. Also, something a little bit more busy where it's like just bouncing off of the riffs. Something like that. You could also do riffs that are more straightforward rhythmically where you're just strictly bouncing. So instead of doing, like, you could just do, like, straight eighth notes. Or even change the accent, so instead of, like, straight, like, 1 and 2 and, you'd be like, or, which is actually another type of riff that I want to talk about, is accenting patterns like that. It's nice because you create a lot of different percussive feels by just changing the notes that you stress. And an easy way to do that is to change from palm muting to just straight up open. So... with all of them open, all of them muted. So yeah, accenting riffs are great because it really is going to create so much rhythm feel in your music, which is great because it creates momentum. And really throughout your music in general, you need momentum because otherwise your listener might get bored. And you have to be careful because if you have too much intensity for too long, it can kind of be like ear fatigue. So it's kind of important to understand the pacing of your song as well. You wouldn't want to necessarily throw a ton of super crazy shit all at the same time. Alright, so we also have riffs that are more strictly melodic. So a lot of times what will happen with riffs like this is they will be in conjunction with sustaining type riffs. So these will have harmonic rhythms that are slower. Harmonic rhythm just refers to the rate at which harmony changes. And basically, you would have something like this, where you have one layer playing something like this. And then on top of it, you would have like a melody. Something. But the idea is just that you have some chords and that you have a melodic element that are sort of in counterpoint with each other. You have the melody playing, doing its thing, and you have the rhythm part interacting with it in different ways that are maybe a little bit more subtle than just strictly playing straight up harmony notes, like straight up thirds or fifths, octaves, anything. And I think that subtlety kind of helps a little bit because then it's not quite as in your face. Now, of course, if you want that effect, go ahead and straight up harmonize them bitches. It's like, go for it. But you also have like your typical sort of like verse type riffs. Now, in a lot of different types of music, they leave space, right? So leaving space in your verse riff is important. So let's see if we can mess around and come up with some verse riff type material. Now, it's not super busy, but there are some spaces. Having some rests and stuff where there's just nothing going on, at least for the guitar. Because you have to think in a lot of situations, at least like if you had like a male singer, for sure, the vocal range is going to be kind of similar, at least sort of in the mid-range of the guitar and with the vocalist. So the problem there lies with competing frequencies. Now, the voice can probably stand out to the guitar to an extent, depending on how it's recorded, but I think it's important to at least consider it while you're writing. Consider the fact that, hey, this riff is going to need vocals over it, so maybe I should make sure that there is enough room within the sonic space for it to sit. Because even if it sounds good to your ears, it might be kind of difficult to achieve a good mix with, and that's partly why it's important to be intentional with your writing, not, trying to write something that would sound shitty when it's been recorded. You don't necessarily want to try to, make it harder for yourself, especially if you're a, home studio person. So I think that's important to make sure that you're not stressing about that too much. You also have some of the more technical riffs where you have different levels of repeating patterns, and this is another thing where Lamb of God is super good at that, where it's sort of varying fills and stuff, where you have I think Lay to Rest is a pretty good example of that. Now what's interesting too is you have the short statement, another short statement, and then the fill here is twice the duration of those two, and I think that's kind of an important factor as far as the flow of the riff, kind of more of an uneven flow to it. And then of course the more technical fill. Now I consider that one whole thing. So yeah, you have a single riff that sort of is comprised of a pretty complex structure within itself. And I think that That kind of stuff is hard to pull off because like writing riffs that don't sound too like over the top like that is kind of difficult. But yeah, I think for that, it's all about having balance within the riff. Having sort of not everything be the exact same duration within the riff, because if everything was the same, like, you know what I mean? Like, because what if Laid to Rest sounded like this? Completely straight. That sounds kind of weird. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I know that, like, I haven't, like, fixed the meters to adjust for that change, but it sounds weird as fuck. So I think that's the important factor with a structured riff like that, where you sort of have even elements within the riff. Now, chorus riffs, I feel like, are kind of a mixed bag, because obviously chorus riffs are catchy. So in the same vein as sort of like what I would call like a hook riff, where the instrumental part alone is what captures your interest, this section needs to be both, where the vocals can shine, but the instrumental parts sound badass as well. And this is obviously kind of a more intense moment in your song, depending on the song, of course. But at least for like metal and stuff, usually the chorus is like high intensity. Other than maybe, say, the breakdown, if it had one, I would say it's probably the most intense part of the song as far as just sonic intensity goes. Chorus riffs, I mean, I feel like are kind of similar to what I was saying before with the sort of melody riffs, where you have like a rhythmic idea. And having a melody on top, like, and that way you sort of have like this relationship between all of these elements that stuck up together to create just an excellent chorus vibe. And that's the important thing, is like making sure that you have all this underlying tension within the bed of instruments that you choose to go beneath the vocals, but making sure that just everything together blends so well. So definitely something to think about. All right, so the next type of riff that I want to talk about is one where it uses a repeating note and has grinding harmonies. And basically you have one note being played the entire time, kind of like a drone, basically. And that creates intensity through harmonic dissonance, and also too the contour of the melody itself, because the shape, whether you're getting higher or getting lower, is going to change the characteristics of the tonal qualities. All right, another type of riff that I see a lot too is riffs that have like that sort of like bouncing off of a string kind of thing. And you could also lump tapping into this as well, and legato, because I think that they kind of achieve similar things, while the effect of legato is drastically different than the effect that you get from hammer-ons and pull-offs and tapping. The smooth nature of it is kind of what I'm talking about. So, you know, or even more so, what you would see is like, stuff like that. Then, of course, you have your rhythmically charged riffs. So this is kind of like power metal-ish, I feel like, where they have like really fast sort of like... Sure. Stuff like that. Very power chord heavy for sure. want to say, do not underestimate the power of octaves, man. Octaves are great. Like, whether they're together, like... octave slides, man. Octave riffs always sound good too, and they're like... when they're just straight octaves as well. Obviously, make sure your guitar is tuned really well when you're going to do that. Two, as far as that goes, like using octaves as a jumping point is important as well. And the thing about octaves that I think is really important to mention is, like, guitar players abuse octaves. Open string, 7 string. Like, and even the 12. There's a couple good intervals for jumping around. I just mentioned octaves, but perfect fifths and perfect fourths are really good for jumping around as well, and that's just in general. If it's not the perfect fourth or the perfect fifth, it's probably the tritone, which is right in between both. But it's a good pivoting point, and that's kind of important too when you're like trying to get from the low to the higher register, you know. Being aware of kind of where those octaves lie as well, so you don't have to, like, you know, go further up the neck. You can just skip a string instead, going up. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna leave you guys with one last type of riff to think about, and that's just either polyrhythmic riffs or riffs that are in meters that are uncommon, like 5/8 and 7/8. So 5/8's pretty chill, because you can either have 2 plus 3 or 3 plus 2 as far as the accent pattern. So 1 2 1 2 3 1 1 1. And then 7/8 is kind of similar, but you have a lot of different ways to break it up. You have 2 2 3, 2 3 2, and 3 2 2. So that would be like 1 2 1 2 1 2 3, 1 2 1 2 3 1 2, and 1 2 3 1 2 1 2. That's 7/8. This will be a 5/8 version. Yeah, I mean, honestly, you don't really see too many other ones. Either they're a combination of those two, which is being the accent pattern of 2 or 3 added together in some fashion. And I'm also going to go ahead and count 1 as a group of either the 2 or 3, depending on how you want to look at it. Alright guys, I'm going to definitely be making more videos like this where it's about, you know, guitar stuff, guitar philosophy, guitar riffs, whatever. There's obviously plenty of ways to write riffs, and I have barely touched the surface. Alright guys, thanks for joining me on today's video about guitar riffs. We're definitely going to be releasing more videos like this in the future, talking about more guitar philosophy, guitar playing, maybe guitar practice and stuff. So I hope this information has helped you. I want to make a disclaimer that this is obviously not the only type of riffs. There's plenty more, and I have barely scratched the surface for what you could actually do. But I just want to give you some ideas to think about it, and give you a series of continual content about the same subject matter. So hopefully it helps, and hey, I'll catch you in the next one.